fluorescent lights flicker once, just once, and in that single half-second of darkness, a woman in blue scrubs catches a man who is already fallen. Nobody sees it happen. The cameras are pointed the wrong way. The reporters are busy adjusting their microphones, smoothing their hair, preparing for close-ups. The mayor is shaking hands near the entrance. Everyone is looking at the spectacle of power. The press suits, the polished shoes, the photographer angling for that perfect shot that will make the front page. Nobody sees the woman. That's exactly how she prefers it. Her name is Maya Chun, and in 12 years of working the night shift at Mercy General Hospital, she has perfected the art of invisibility. She is the shadow that moves through chaos, the calm eye at the center of every storm that tears through the emergency room. She doesn't need you to see her. She just needs to do the work. Right now, the work is a 63-year-old man named Gerald whose knees have buckled in the waiting area, whose lips have gone the wrong shade of purple, whose eyes are rolling towards something no one in that room wants to see. Maya has his wrist. She already knows his pulse, erratic, thready, skipping like a stone across water. She already knows this is not a panic attack. She already knows what comes next if she doesn't move. So she moves. "I need a gurney at the West Corridor now," she says into her radio. Her voice doesn't shake, never shakes. It has the quality of something that was tested in conditions most people will never experience and emerged on the other side, polished by pressure into something harder than fear. The cameras still aren't on her, but they're about to be, because 30 seconds later, the scene in the waiting room becomes impossible to ignore. Gerald's body arches. A woman nearby screams. A child starts crying. And suddenly the carefully orchestrated press event that Mayor Richard Dalton has spent 3 weeks planning begins to unravel at the seams. Live, on camera, in front of every local news station in the city. Dalton doesn't like unraveling. He crosses the room in long, purposeful strides, microphone still clipped to his lapel, jaw set. The kind of man who has mistaken confidence for competence so many times that the two have become indistinguishable in his own mind. He reaches Maya just as she's positioning Gerald for transport. He looks at her, really looks at her, for the first time, and then he makes the worst mistake of his career. He opens his mouth. But here's the thing about Maya Chun that nobody in that room knows yet. The thing that the badge on her chest doesn't tell you. The thing that 12 years of quiet night shifts has carefully buried beneath layers of routine and restraint. She has heard men speak to her like this before, in places where men like Dalton would not last 5 minutes. And she survived those places by learning something that most people never have to learn. How to stay completely calm when everything is on fire. Stay with me, because what happens in the next 40 minutes will change every single person in that building, including the mayor. And it starts with a door bursting open and a burnt soldier who knows a voice he hasn't heard in 7 years. Tio understand what happens that day. You have to understand Maya Chun. Not the Maya that her colleagues know. The one who drinks black coffee at 2 a.m., who can place in 4 on the first try in the dark, who once talked a suicidal teenager off the roof of the parking garage with nothing but 10 minutes and the kind of steadiness that makes people feel, against all evidence, that everything might be okay. You have to understand the Maya that exists in the spaces between those things, the quiet details that don't fit the picture. The way she flinches just slightly when helicopters fly too low over the building. The way she keeps a small, laminated photograph tucked inside her locker, not facing outward, but turned toward the metal wall, as though she cannot quite decide whether she wants to look at it or not. The way she knows, without thinking, how to apply a tourniquet with a shoelace and a pen. The way she knows the precise angle at which to hold a wound to slow bleeding in the absence of proper dressing. The way she once directed a paramedic trainee through a roadside emergency over the phone with the calm of someone who had done it dozens of times. Not in a hospital, not with proper equipment, not with the luxury of a clean floor and fluorescent light. Her colleagues have noticed these things. They just don't ask about them. Not because they don't care, because Maya has a way of deflecting personal questions that is so smooth, so practiced, that you don't realize the subject has changed until you're already 3 topics away. She grew up in Sacramento. That much she'll tell you. Parents who immigrated from Guangzhou when she was 2 years old. Father worked at a shipping company. Mother was a seamstress. Maya was the kind of student who never made a fuss. Straight A's, quiet ambition, a full scholarship to a nursing program that she chose over medical school, a decision that baffled everyone who knew her and that she has never once explained. She joined Mercy General at 26. Night shift. By choice. I like the night, she told the hiring manager. Less noise, cleaner thinking. What she didn't say was that she already knew exactly what it felt like to work in conditions where noise was dangerous, where distraction was fatal, where the difference between a moment of panic and a moment of clarity was measured in human lives. She didn't say that because no one asked the right question. No one ever asks the right question. Her colleagues adore her in the way that people adore a lighthouse, grateful for the signal, not particularly curious about the mechanics. Dr. Ellison, the senior attending, calls her the best nurse he's worked with in 20 years and means it entirely. The way you mean something that you've simply accepted as true without examining it too closely. Jenna, the charge nurse on the evening shift, once said that Maya makes her feel safe in a way she can't explain, like having a pilot in the room who has landed in bad weather before. That's closer to the truth than Jenna knows, because there are people scattered across 3 continents, living in cities Maya has never visited, sleeping in beds and houses she will never see, who owe her their lives in a way so specific and so certain that some of them have never stopped looking for her. She disappeared before they could find her. That's not an accident. Maya Chun does not disappear from things out of weakness. She disappears from things because she has learned, at significant personal cost, that visibility is a form of vulnerability, that being seen means being held, that being held means being asked to go back, to explain, to relive. She would rather stay in the shadow of the fluorescent lights, catching falling men, calming coated hearts, threading IVs in the dark. She would rather be invisible. There is one photograph in her locker, turned to face the wall. It is small and laminated and creased along one edge where it has been folded and unfolded too many times. If you could see it, if you could hold it in your hands and look at it, you would see 12 people. Men and women in mismatched clothes, some in uniform, some not, standing in front of a structure that is mostly rubble, in a landscape that is mostly dust. They are smiling. They look like people who have been afraid for a long time and have, for one brief moment, forgotten. There is one figure near the edge of the photograph with her face half turned away from the camera. She is the only one not smiling. She is already looking at something else, already scanning the horizon, already moving. That's Maya. She was 29 years old in that photograph. She has not looked at it directly in 4 years. Mercy General is not a glamorous hospital. It sits on the east side of Carterton, a mid-sized city with a downtown that has been revitalizing for the better part of a decade, which is another way of saying that the coffee shops and breweries are slowly pushing up against the edges of the neighborhoods that can least afford them. The ER handles everything. Car accidents, overdoses, domestic violence, industrial injuries, the slow grinding emergencies of poverty, and neglect that don't make the news because they happen too quietly and too consistently to be news anymore. Maya has worked this floor for 12 years. She knows every hallway, every supply closet, every broken tile that catches the gurney wheels at 3 a.m. She knows which vending machine will eat your dollar and which attending will actually answer the phone on the first ring. She knows the security guard, Lorenzo, who moonlights as a youth basketball coach and who always brings in tamales at Christmas. She knows Mrs. Papadimitriou, who comes in every third Thursday claiming chest pains and who is, in fact, terribly lonely. Maya always spends an extra 10 minutes with Mrs. Papadimitriou. She knows this world in the bone-deep way that people know places they've chosen to stay in. Not because it's easy, because it's hers. The morning of Mayor Dalton's press event, the shift starts like any other. Maya arrives 20 minutes early. She always arrives 20 minutes early. She checks the board, checks supplies, checks in with the overnight team. There are 4 patients waiting. A broken wrist, a high fever, a man who says he slipped on his front steps and whose eyes say something different. Maya notes all of it. She notes everything. Dr. Ellison arrives at 7:15 looking harassed. Dalton's bringing cameras. He says to no one in particular, to everyone in general. PR wants the ER looking vibrant but controlled. Whatever that means. It means they want it to look busy enough to photograph, but empty enough not to be depressing, says Jenna from behind the nursing station. Maya says nothing. She's already recalibrating in her head. A press event means corridors will be partially blocked. It means the entrance flow will be disrupted. It means any emergency that comes in during the window will have to navigate around the performance of governance rather than the reality of it. She adjusts her mental map of the building accordingly. This is another thing people don't notice about Maya. She is always, on some level, running contingency plans. Not anxiously, not in the way of someone who expects disaster. In the way of someone who has learned that disaster doesn't announce itself and that the gap between chaos and control is almost always closed by whoever has already thought 3 steps ahead. Mayor Dalton arrives at 9 sharp with an entourage that seems slightly too large for the hallway it occupies. He is tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of handsome that photographs well and reads as authority on a screen. He has a chief of staff, a press secretary, 2 aides, 3 camera crews, and the practiced ease of a man who has been performing leadership for so long that the performance and the reality have become the same thing, at least in his own mind. He shakes hands with the hospital administrator, a nervous man named Whitfield who has clearly been briefed extensively and is executing that briefing with visible tension. He poses for photos at the nursing station. He makes a joke about hospitals that is harmless and forgettable. The cameras love him. Maya watches all of this from the corridor near exam room 4. Not because she's interested, because the cameras are positioned in a way that narrows the hallway to the supply closet she'll need in the next 20 minutes. And she's working out her route. She doesn't dislike the mayor exactly. She doesn't have a strong feeling about him in either direction. He is a variable in her environment. She is calculating around him the same way she calculates around everything. What she doesn't know, what she cannot yet know, is that he has already decided to dislike her. Dalton is a man who notices dismissal, who reads indifference as insubordination, who has spent enough years surrounded by people who arrange themselves around his preferences that the absence of that arrangement registers as a kind of personal affront. Maya isn't ignoring him. She simply isn't orienting herself toward him. In a room full of people who are subtly angled in his direction, she is pointing somewhere else entirely. He notices. He files it away. And 37 minutes later, when the chaos erupts and the cameras swing toward the wrong kind of scene and Dalton feels control slipping in front of a live audience, he reaches for the nearest available target. The woman in blue scrubs who isn't looking at him. The woman who has never looked at him. He has no idea that he is about to light a match in a room full of things that don't burn the way he expects. He has no idea about the photograph in the locker. He has no idea about the rubble and the dust and the 12 people standing in front of it. He has no idea about the voices of men who survived the unsurvivable and who have been listening for 7 years for a voice they cannot forget. The press event is still running smoothly. For Now.IT starts with Gerald. Gerald Morrow, 63, retired electrician, widower, grandfather of 4, is sitting in the waiting area because his left arm has been tingling since Tuesday, and his daughter finally threatened to take away his car keys if he didn't get checked out. He doesn't want to be here. He is already rehearsing the conversation where he tells his daughter he's fine, that it was nothing, that she worries too much. He will not finish rehearsing that conversation. At 9:47 a.m., Gerald's body decides it has been polite long enough. The tingling in his arm becomes something else. A pressure enormous and sudden, like a fist closing around his chest from the inside. He makes a sound that is too small for what it is. The woman sitting next to him, a young mother with a toddler on her lap, doesn't hear it. The receptionist is talking to someone on the phone. The camera crew near the entrance is focused on getting a clean shot of Dalton gesturing at a hallway mural that has recently been repainted as part of a community engagement initiative. But Maya hears it. She is 40 feet away, behind a half-open door, reviewing a patient chart. She cannot explain how she hears it, the quality of that small, wrong sound in a room full of larger, unimportant noise. She simply does. It is the kind of hearing that cannot be taught, only earned. She is moving before she is consciously aware of having made a decision. By the time she reaches Gerald, he is listing sideways, his color a narrative of emergency. Ashen at the edges, gray at the lips. She catches him. She lowers him. She has 2 fingers at his carotid and is already calling it in before his back touches the floor. Code to the waiting area, west side. Cardiac event, male patient, 60 plus, possible MI. I need a crash cart and backup now. Her voice is flat and fast and carries the particular texture of someone who is not performing urgency but living inside it. Gerald, can you hear me? Stay with me. Open your eyes. Gerald's eyes flutter. Good. Stay here. Keep looking at me. This is when the cameras turn. It is not a deliberate choice by any one camera person. It is the instinctive physics of storytelling. Conflict, motion, and human distress are more compelling than a politician gesturing at a mural. 3 cameras swing simultaneously. The reporters follow. The room reorganizes itself around the emergency, which means it reorganizes itself around Dalton. And Dalton, to his significant misfortune, is standing directly between the cameras and the scene. He has 2 choices. He can step aside gracefully, allowing the medical team to work, or he can do something with this moment, find a way to be useful or at least visible in a way that reads as leadership. He hesitates for exactly 1 second too long, and in that second, Maya looks up, not at him, through him, the way you look through a window at the thing on the other side. She calculates corridor access, gurney trajectory, the position of the camera equipment blocking the east path. She makes a decision. Sir, I need you to move to your left, please. Now. It is not a rude request. It is not aggressive. It is the voice of someone who has dispensed with social performance in favor of functional urgency. And it does not occur to her, even for a moment, that the man she is speaking to has not been spoken to that way in years. Dalton stiffens. Something moves behind his eyes, quick and cold, like a current under ice. He doesn't move to his left. He takes 1 step forward. What's happening here? He says. Not to her. To the room. To the cameras. The voice of a man reestablishing the hierarchy. Cardiac event, Maya says, already turning back to Gerald. Sir, please clear the area. I'm the mayor of this city, Dalton says, and his voice has a new quality now, an edge that is familiar to everyone in the room who has ever worked for a man like this. I think I have a right to know what's going on in a public hospital. Jenna appears at Maya's side with the crash cart. Their movements are synchronized, efficient, private in the way of people who have done this together enough times that language is optional. Mr. Mayor, says Administrator Whitfield, appearing from somewhere near the entrance, face the color of old paper. Perhaps we should. Is someone going to explain to me? Dalton says, louder now, angled toward the cameras with the body language of a man who has decided to make this a scene. Why a routine hospital visit has turned into whatever this is? He gestures at Maya, at the floor, Gerald, and who exactly is in charge here? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like this nurse, the word comes out wrong, pressed down, reduced, has completely disrupted a sanctioned city event without any apparent authorization, and nobody seems to be. She's saving his life, Jenna says. Quiet, clear, not challenging, simply factual. Dalton turns to look at Jenna the way people look at small objects that have made unexpectedly large sounds. I appreciate that, he says, and he doesn't. But there are protocols. There is a chain of command. And in a public space with city officials present, I would expect, with respect, Mayor Dalton. Maya's voice cuts across his without raising in volume. She doesn't look up from Gerald. She is establishing an airway, She is doing 4 things simultaneously. This man is having a myocardial infarction. The next 3 minutes will determine whether he survives it. I am going to focus on that. If you'd like to discuss protocols, I am happy to do that in approximately 45 minutes. Silence. It lasts 1 second. Then Dalton does something that will define him for the rest of his time in office. He leans toward the nearest camera, not consciously, but in the way of a man whose instincts have been trained by years of performance. And he says the thing that will get clipped and shared and replayed until it becomes the answer to a pub quiz question about the worst misjudgment in the city's recent political history. She should stay in her lane, he says, evenly, clearly, looking directly at the camera. She's a nurse. There are doctors for this. I'm not going to have a city event derailed by someone who doesn't understand her role in this institution. The room goes very still, not silent. Gerald is still breathing. The machines are still humming. But beneath the mechanical sound, the human silence descends. The particular quiet of a room full of people who have witnessed something they cannot yet categorize but know, instinctively, is wrong. Jenna's jaw is tight. Lorenzo, the security guard, has stopped moving entirely. Whitfield looks like he is considering whether it is too late to become a different person. Maya doesn't react. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't look up. Gerald's heart stabilizes. The crash cart is not needed. Maya has done what she always does. The work. In the middle of everything. In spite of everything. She doesn't know that the moment has been broadcast on a live feed. She doesn't know that it has already been clipped and is moving across social media with the speed of outrage. She doesn't know any of that because she is watching Gerald's face return to color, watching his breathing slow to something survivable, watching a man come back from the edge of the thing none of us can come back from. She only knows he's going to be okay. The doors at the far end of the corridor burst open. The gurney comes through fast. 2 paramedics, their faces carrying the particular strain of a long drive with a bad patient, pushing hard. The wheels catch the cracked tile near the entrance, the one Maya knows, and the cart shutters, and then they're moving again. And on the gurney is a man who looks like he's been through something that should not be survivable. Burns along the left side of his face, neck, and arm. The kind of burns that tell a specific story to anyone who knows how to read it. Not a kitchen accident. Not a car fire. This is the pattern of a blast. Of something going wrong in a way that war goes wrong. His uniform, civilian clothes now, but worn in the particular way of someone who spent a long time not wearing civilian clothes, is cut away at the sleeves. And 4 is already running. His eyes are closed, but his hands are moving. Slow, rhythmic, almost unconscious. The fingers of his right hand pressing together and releasing, pressing and releasing, like someone keeping time to a song only they can hear. Maya reads the intake form in 4 seconds. Sergeant First Class Daniel Yates, 34. Transferred from Fort Meade after a transport accident overseas. 7 weeks ago, though the wounds are telling a longer story than that. Possible traumatic brain injury, elevated heart rate. He has been drifting in and out of consciousness for the last 2 hours. She moves to him without hesitation. Daniel. She leans close, calm and even and certain. My name is Maya. You're at Mercy, General. You're safe. Can you hear me? The hands stop. Something shifts. Subtle, seismic. His eyelids flutter. Daniel, I need you to follow my voice. Stay here. You're safe. And then his eyes open. Not the slow, confused opening of someone surfacing from unconsciousness. Something faster than that. Something that arrives with the quality of recognition. Sharp and electric and searching. The way eyes open when they have heard something they have been waiting to hear for a very long time without knowing they were waiting. He looks at her. Maya doesn't notice, not immediately. She's checking his pupils. Her pen light moving with the practiced speed of someone who needs information quickly. But Daniel Yates is not looking at her pen light. He is looking at her face. He is listening. He is doing the thing that soldiers in dark places learn to do. The thing where you strip everything away, all the visual noise, all the context, all the uniforms and rank and geography, and you listen to the one thing that doesn't change. The thing that follows a person everywhere they go. Their voice. Your pupils are responsive. Maya says quietly, moving her pen light. Good. Can you tell me your pain level? Scale of 1 to 10. Daniel Yates's mouth moves. For a moment, no sound comes out. Then, 7. Good. Okay. 7 I can work with. I'm going to. Say that again, he says. Maya stops. Say what again? 7 I can work with. She pauses, a half beat, the first interruption in her efficiency. Daniel, I need you to stay focused on. Camp Taji, he says. 2017. Do you remember Camp Taji? The room temperature changes. Not literally, but something moves through the ER like a current, the invisible voltage of a moment becoming something larger than itself. Maya is very still. You told a kid named Reyes, Daniel says, and his voice is getting stronger now, fueled by something that isn't adrenaline but might be close. You told him 7 I can work with, and then you worked a field dressing for 20 minutes with your hands and 2 rolls of gauze that should not have been enough, and he lived. He still sends you, he sends someone a card every Christmas to a Red Cross address. Because he didn't know your name. The room has gone very quiet. Jenna is not moving. Lorenzo is not moving. Even the mayor, whose face is doing something complicated and private, is not moving. I'm just a nurse, Maya says softly. The words are careful. An exit being constructed. You weren't a nurse there, Daniel says. You were a volunteer medic, in a zone where volunteers weren't supposed to be. And you stayed for it. He stops. Something moves across his face. We didn't know how long you stayed. You were there when we went in. You were there when we came out. 6 months. 8. And then one day you were just... He exhales. Gone. The silence is enormous. Mayor Dalton stands at its edge. His press secretary has stopped typing. One of the camera operators is still filming because this is the kind of thing that the body knows before the mind does. That this is the real story, that this is what matters, and you point the camera at it whether or not you understand it yet. Daniel Yates looks at Maya Chun for a long moment. Then he looks at the mayor, and he says 5 words. 5 words, in a voice that carries the flat, factual authority of someone who has been in places where the difference between a lie and the truth was measured in body counts. She saved 47 lives. He pauses, not for effect, because speaking hurts, and some things deserve a space around. 47 confirmed, in 8 months, in a field hospital with no real equipment and no real support. And then she left without putting her name on any of it. He turns back to Maya, something in his eyes that is not accusation, that is closer to grief and closer to gratitude. We looked for you. We looked for a long time. Maya does not respond right away. When she does, her voice is as even as it has ever been. You're at a 7, she says. Let me get you to a 4. And she goes back to work. The next 20 minutes are the most watched 20 minutes in the hospital's history. Not because of anything that explodes. Not because of a dramatic confrontation or a speech or a moment engineered for maximum impact. But because of what happens when an ordinary room is forced to reckon with extraordinary reality. And the ordinary room doesn't quite know where to put it. The cameras are still running. The hospital administrator has realized, somewhere in the last 90 seconds, that this is far beyond the scope of any protocol he's ever been trained for. He is standing near the wall with the expression of a man who has wandered into the wrong film. Dalton has not moved. He is, for the first time in recent memory, completely still. Not the stillness of composure, the stillness of a man whose entire framework for the current situation has been quietly destroyed and who is still processing what exactly is left in its place. His press secretary is holding her tablet and staring at it with the concentrated discomfort of someone who is watching the live feed and understanding in real time that the 20 seconds of footage that already exist from earlier in the morning are going to require management for a very long time. But all of this is peripheral, because Daniel Yates is deteriorating. Not dramatically, not cinematically, in the quiet, technical way that serious injuries deteriorate. The numbers on the monitor ticking in the wrong direction, the breathing pattern shifting to something shallower, the indicators accumulating into a picture that trained eyes read as urgent. Maya reads it. She has already paged Dr. Ellison. She has already ordered the imaging. She is already at the medication cart, pulling what she needs with the speed and certainty of someone whose hands have made these decisions thousands of times. But there's a problem. The corridor is still partially blocked by the press event setup. The camera equipment has been moved, mostly, but the tech scaffolding along the east wall hasn't been cleared, and the fastest route to the imaging suite, the one that matters for a patient in this condition, runs directly through it. She turns. "I need that east corridor cleared in the next 2 minutes," she says, "to the room, to whoever will listen." Lorenzo is already moving. Two of Dalton's aides look at each other, look at the scaffolding, look at the aide on their left, and start breaking it down with the guilty energy of people who understand, suddenly, that they have been on the wrong side of something and would like very much to move. Dr. Ellison arrives, takes one look at the chart, one look at Maya, and begins speaking in the clipped shorthand of their shared professional language. They work in parallel, two people who have logged enough emergencies together that they don't need to narrate what they're doing. They move around each other like water. "Talk to me," Ellison says. "Blast injury, 7 weeks out. Secondary complications presenting now. Possible internal bleeding missed in the initial field assessment. His pressure's dropping." She doesn't say "I think." She says his pressure's dropping. Certainty, not hedging. The kind of certainty that comes from reading 200 charts that look like this one. Agreed. Let's get him up. It is during the move, the careful, practiced choreography of moving a serious patient through a corridor that is almost clear, that something else happens. Something nobody plans for. Daniel reaches out and catches Maya's wrist. 47, he says. His voice is fading again. It was 47 that we knew about, but Reyes always said the real number was higher. He said you were there before the unit arrived, before we knew anyone was there. Maya is still moving, still doing the math of the corridor, the timing, the next 3 decisions. "We need to move you now, Daniel." "I know." He releases her wrist. We needed you to know, that we knew, that it mattered." His eyes are closing again. "We never said thank you." The corridor is quiet enough that everyone hears it. Everyone. Jenna, who has known Maya for 8 years and who thought she had a reasonable picture of who she was working next to. Lorenzo, who has eaten tamales with her at Christmas and never thought to ask what the military-precise first aid kit in her locker was for. Dr. Ellison, who called her the best nurse he'd worked with in 20 years and is now understanding that he was both right and spectacularly wrong about the nature of his own assessment. And Mayor Richard Dalton, who is standing at the entrance to the corridor, who has not left, who is watching Maya-chan move through the cleared hallway with a patient she is keeping alive through the compounded weight of knowledge and care and 12 years of chosen invisibility. And something is happening on his face that his press secretary has never seen before and will later describe, in an interview she doesn't want to give, as the specific look of a man realizing that he has made a very public mistake about a very large thing. The gurney reaches imaging. The doors close. Mercy General exhales. And the clip, the one with Daniel's 5 words, recorded cleanly on 3 separate cameras, has already been viewed 400,000 times. Gerald Morrow is discharged 4 days later. He brings flowers. Sunflowers, because his wife always liked sunflowers and he has kept the habit of buying them the way he keeps all of her habits now. Carefully, deliberately, as a form of faithfulness to something that hasn't ended. He asks for Maya at the nursing desk. He is told she is on the floor. He waits. When she appears, he holds out the flowers and starts to say something and finds, to his apparent surprise, that he can't. He is 63 years old and has not cried in public since 1987 and does so now without particular embarrassment. Maya takes the flowers. "You stayed with me," Gerald says when he can speak, "the whole time. You kept saying my name." "I did," Maya says. "Why? There was so much happening. The cameras, all of it." Maya looks at the sunflowers. "Because you needed to hear it, and I was there. That's all. That's the whole answer." Daniel Yates is transferred to a rehabilitation facility 2 weeks later. Before he goes, he asks to see Maya. She comes. He has a letter with him, handwritten, pages long, covered in the names of people who were not in any official record of her time at Camp Taji. People who don't know her face but know her voice. People who have been trying, in the invisible way of people who owe debts they can't locate, to find the right direction to send their gratitude. He gives her the letter. She reads it in the parking garage on her break, alone, sitting in her car with the engine off. No one sees that either. Mayor Dalton issues a public apology. It is carefully worded and clearly crafted, and most of it is the work of his communications team. But there is one sentence in the middle, slightly off format, slightly unpolished, that feels different from the rest. It reads, "I said she should stay in her lane. I didn't know that her lane was wider than anything I could have imagined. I am sorry for that, and I am sorrier for what it says about how I look at people." His press secretary later says that was the one sentence he wrote himself. At Mercy General, nothing changes, practically speaking. Maya is still on nights, still drinks black coffee at 2 a.m., still catches falling men before they hit the floor, still threads IVs in the dark. But something has shifted, invisibly, in the way the floor tilts around her. Jenna brings her coffee sometimes without being asked. Lorenzo nods at her with a particular kind of seriousness, the nod of someone who has recalibrated. Dr. Ellison stops calling her the best nurse he's worked with. He starts calling her something else. The best person, he tells a group of interns, that he has ever seen do this job. The photograph in Maya's locker, still turned toward the wall, but the crease along the edge, the fold from all the time she's opened it and closed it, is a little less sharp. Like maybe she looked at it once, recently, and held it a little more gently than before. Here's what I keep thinking about. Maya Chen never asked to be seen. She spent 12 years making herself invisible because visibility is its own kind of weight. It comes with expectations, with explanations, with the demand to become the story instead of doing the work. She chose the work, every single time. In a war zone with no resources, in an ER with flickering lights, in front of cameras, in front of a man who reduced her to a job title, in front of an entire city watching on a live feed. She chose the work. There are people like Maya in every building you have ever walked into, in every emergency you have ever walked past. People whose depth you could not see because you were too busy looking at the surface. People who carry histories that would floor you, and who have chosen deliberately to carry them quietly. The real story was never about the title on her badge. It was about what a person becomes when they stop needing anyone to know who they are. So here's what I want to ask you, and I want you to sit with it before you answer.